Hello and welcome to the channel. As always, like the video, and if you enjoyed the story, leave a comment on if you would want more. This fan fiction was not created by me, but in the description there is a link to the fanfic so you can show your support to the creator and read along. Without any more delay, let's dive into the story.
They will hunt you, Uzumaki Naruto. Blue eyes, normally vibrant with energy, were shadowed, contemplative even. It was a sight to behold on the blonde-haired, blue-eyed 7-year-old, though no one was around to see it. A gust of wind gently ruffled the boy's hair as he overlooked the village from on top of the Yondaime Hokage's head. The eyes, while staring at the vast village below, saw none of it. They saw not the administration building, nor the Grand Archive, the Shinobi Academy, or any other building of note. They did, however, see the faint outlines of the numerous shinobi hurriedly entering and exiting the Uchiha district. The once proud, sprawling clan compound was now littered with the blood and corpses of its former members. And he had met the man who had done the deed. Well, what? The short blonde asked his uninvited houseguest. The boy had experienced some frightening moments in his life, not the least of which had been what he had determined to be an assassination attempt when he was 4. This one was beginning to move up the list. Those red eyes were both awesome and terrifying, their burning intensity belying the churning emotions behind the emotionless mask his guest wore. They will hunt you, Uzumaki Naruto, Uchiha Itachi spoke. His voice was nearly a monotone, lacking both emotion and inflection that was commonly used. They will hunt you. They will find you. And they will kill you. Just behind the terror he was feeling, only compounded by the blood-spattered ANBU armor the teenager wore, he realized that the shinobi was giving him a message. Why? Why are you telling me this? Naruto asked, his voice quavering. To serve as a warning. Those who would hunt you are both numerous and powerful, some far more powerful than myself, Naruto's once silent protector told him. There will come a time when the Sandaime's protection will not be enough, a time when this village can no longer protect you. I warn you now so that you may be ready for that day. Naruto, in his entranced state of heightened fear, could not even nod in acceptance of the teenager's point. Who, he squeaked. Inwardly, he mentally berated himself of showing such weakness in front of the teenager, though he really couldn't help it. An entire village full of people whose animosity was only barely concealed couldn't break him, so how could this lone teenager inspire such fear in him? Itachi paused, seeming to weigh whether or not he should tell Naruto, before Akatsuki, and a man named Uchiha Madara. Abruptly, the sense of imminent doom and terror subsided, left with only confusion as the red eyes faded to black. The teenage ANBU made a single seal, before vanishing silently with a small gust of wind. His parting words were but a faded whisper upon a breeze. Survive, Uzumaki Naruto. Needless to say, he hadn't been able to sleep. That led into where he was now, seated atop the stone head of Konoha's greatest hero. It wasn't the most common occurrence to find the blonde there, but it was one of the boy's few true haunts, a place where he could be alone to think, away from the judgmental eyes of the villagers. Naruto usually avoided this spot, preferring to spend his free time training or executing a well-thought-out prank on some unsuspecting villager, rather than thinking. Thinking was boring, and often painful. While many, his academy classmates included, would say this as confirmation of his lack of intelligence, it was far from the case. While not the sharpest kunai in the holster, Naruto was far from unintelligent. He merely applied himself to other pursuits. Thinking was painful because it inevitably led to questions. Tough questions, painful questions, and questions that no one seemed to want to answer. Not even Old Man Sandaime would answer those questions, and he was one of the few people who were nice to Naruto. Thinking led to questions like, who his parents were, and why did no one seem to know who they were when he asked? Why did a man in black try to kill him 3 years ago? Why did everyone seem to hate him, down to the last villager? With such unanswerable questions plaguing his young mind, it would come as no surprise to anyone that the boy did his best to avoid true introspective thought at all costs. He succeeded too. Not this time, though. This time, there was no avoiding the questions, though they were of a different sort. Who was Akatsuki? Who was Uchiha Madara? Naruto hardly felt that he could go to the Sandaime with questions like these. After all, he couldn't answer the easy questions, like who Naruto's parents were. Why would the old man be able to answer these? And why would Itachi tell him what he did? If nothing else, Naruto's thoughts were revolving around this one question the most. He had learned of the teenage ANBU's name when he had made his way to where he was now. He had heard many on-duty shinobi speak the name in whispers as he snuck by them. Others had cursed it violently for the destruction he had single-handedly carried out. The fact that the executioner of the Uchiha clan had warned him of people out to kill him only made the question that much more confusing, and the answer that much more tantalizing. Not for the first time in his 7 years of living, Naruto was confused. It wasn't a feeling he liked. He needed answers, and he needed them quickly, before he could decide what he was going to do. Unbidden, a statement from one of his senseis, he thought the scarred man's name was Irika, made its way to his mind. Information is the backbone of the true shinobi. Without it, a living shinobi was soon to become a dead shinobi. His course set, he would gather the necessary information before setting a plan of action. According to Itachi, his life was in danger. This was a matter to be taken most seriously, even more seriously than his pranks and his dream to be Hokage. He couldn't just wing it like he usually did. Blue eyes coming back into focus, Naruto snapped his attention to the circular, black building that served as the Grand Archive. It wasn't a place that Naruto frequented often. Memories of his last visit to the archive made themselves known, and Naruto scratched the back of his head, letting out a nervous laugh, unknowingly dispelling the tension in his body. This may prove to be a bit harder than he had first imagined. As the archive workers were still bitter about having their workplace desecrated, orange was a great color, in Naruto's opinion at least. He was left with only one option. It had taken him the better part of 2 months, but he had managed to master the Henge no Jutsu. It hadn't been easy, not by any stretch of the mill. As neither of his instructors, the scarred man was named Irika, had consented to teach him the E-rank ninjutsu, they had said he was nowhere near advanced enough. He had had to resort to more extreme measures. His first had been his tried and true patented spying. He had snuck out of class in order to watch some of the older students practice the technique, and had inadvertently overheard what their instructors were telling them to do with their chakra. Now, Naruto was far more intelligent than his classmates and teachers gave him credit for, but he wasn't at the level to be able to reverse engineer a technique just by watching it and listening to some vague tips not meant for his ears. His second measure had been the academy library, small though it was. He had thought Suzume Sensei was going to have a heart attack when he asked her where to find a scroll on the henge. The mousy Chunin had looked put out at being forced to help the whiskered student, but had been unable to find a good enough excuse to refuse the blonde. From there it had been naught but nigh endless hours of training as he attempted to figure out the secrets behind the henge. It likely would have taken him longer, had fortune not smiled on him as he was listening in on a conversation between an older student and an instructor. Apparently, the trainee was using too much chakra for the henge to work properly, and the instructor set the girl to doing the leaf-sticking exercise, in order to help the girl limit her flow of chakra into the jutsu. The scroll had said nothing of the sort was necessary, and it was only sheer luck that Naruto had happened upon that gem of information. Once he had completed the leaf-sticking exercise, no easy feat for the blonde, he discovered he had a lot of chakra, more than all the students in his class. At least, the henge became that much easier, and the mastery of the technique finally boiled down to sheer concentration. And so, he found himself once more outside the Grand Archive, staring dispassionately at the symbol for fire that was engraved on the side. He took a strand of mousy brown hair in his fingers, quickly checking to make sure that the henge was still in effect, before striding forward confidently. Opening the double glass doors, Naruto felt the stale air of the archive brush over him, grimacing in distaste as the smell of old parchment and paper made itself apparent. Moving quickly, he wanted to spend as little time as physically possible in here. He approached the reference center. Stopping in front of the half-circle of wood, his presence was noticed by an attractive, auburn-haired girl who looked no older than 13. "May I help you?" she asked politely, her voice having a pleasant lilt to it. A smile appeared on her face as she took in the form of the 7-year-old. Naruto barely withheld a scowl. It had been this girl who had denied him entry 2 months previous, citing that he was banned until such a point when he became a full-fledged shinobi. She had been rather polite about it, but it didn't raise Naruto's opinion of her. "Where can I find information on the Uchiha clan?" he asked, using his best innocent look. It was complete with wide blue eyes, the only defining feature Naruto had left unchanged by his henge. The girl didn't bat an eye when he asked for information about the once great clan. He assumed that he wasn't the only one looking to become more informed of them since their rather untimely demise. "Right this way, dear," she said with a smile. It was a pretty smile. He followed the attractive girl to the middle of the library that had been marked and designated as clans. From what little Naruto understood about the archive, he knew that this area held all the non-classified information on Konoha's various shinobi clans. The information was far from sensitive, though it often contained some small amount of information about the better-known clan techniques. The majority, however, dealt with clan history. Hopefully, that would be all that Naruto would need. He quietly thanked the pretty girl who had helped him, receiving an offer for any future help that he may need. Her name was Mai. He tentatively opened the book that the assistant had gotten for him, and was promptly confused. The history book, like all others, started at the beginning. It was a general book, dealing with some information dating back before the founding of Konoha, though not much. It came as quite the surprise to find the name Uchiha Madara on the first page. Naruto sighed heavily. The book stated that Madara had been one of Konoha's founding fathers, alongside Senju Hashirama, Konoha's Shodai. That made him older than the Sandaime by a few decades. It was going to be one of those days. That, of course, raised even more questions. Naruto highly doubted that Itachi had intentionally misled him. Naruto had had a few encounters with the Uchiha before that night, and it simply wasn't in the stoic teenager's nature to give misinformation. The boy had been the epitome of professionalism. Not to mention, he was in ANBU. Everyone in the village knew that those guys had no sense of humor. With all other avenues exhausted, Naruto's young mind was forced to wrap around the idea that either Itachi had been wrong, or that Madara really was alive. Regardless, he had work to do. Even if Itachi had been wrong about Madara, Naruto didn't think he would mislead him about having some shady organization after his head. Itachi had also said that some members were stronger than him. Now, while Naruto had no real idea of how strong Itachi was, he had apparently wiped out the Uchiha clan single-handedly. That took some serious skills. If people stronger than Itachi were after him, Naruto shuddered. He didn't want to think about what might happen. Hell, he didn't even know if these mysterious murderers were even stronger than the Sandaime. 2 months ago, he wouldn't have even entertained the notion. The old man was Hokage. He was the strongest. The last 2 months of observation and training had opened his eyes some, though, and Itachi's message hadn't done much to help him keep a stable worldview. The truth of the matter was, the old man was, well, old. While old didn't mean weak, he was still the Hokage after all. Being old certainly didn't make him any better. Not physically at least. He couldn't remember how many times the old man had preached to him about how a shinobi needed to use his mind just as much, if not more, than his body. Naruto was starting to see how that might be necessary. Itachi was a thinker, if all he had heard about the prodigy lately had been true. The old man was a thinker, a great one, if Irika Sensei's lectures about Konoha's history were to be believed. Hell, this Madara character was likely a thinker. If he really was alive, which was doubtful, the book said he had lost a battle with the Shodai, and had never been seen again, then he must have been pretty smart to survive unnoticed for so long. Naruto shook his head, closing his book lightly, watching dispassionately as the resulting displaced air fluttered some pages that were spread across his table. Looking outside, he noticed that some time had passed. The sun had moved enough that a couple of hours might well have gone by. How he hated thinking. He stood fluidly, stretching his tight muscles. Naruto brushed an errant lock of brown hair out of his face as he moved to the front of the archive. He gave his book to the attendant. It wasn't the same girl as before, he noted. Too bad. Stepping out of the grand building, his eyes automatically found the face of the fourth Hokage. His idol. He shook his head. Nothing was the same anymore. His grand dream to be Hokage seemed insignificant compared to the monumental mountain that had been dropped in front of him. With becoming Hokage, he had had time. Plenty of it, in fact. The path had been fairly clear-cut, as well. Genin, Chunin, Jonin, they were all milestones on his grand journey. Now though, he had to survive. He sighed heavily, it was becoming a pattern. Glancing around the street, Naruto observed the crowd moving back and forth. Not a single one looked his way. That wasn't anything new, at least. It really was amazing how alone you could be in a crowd. Unbidden, a scowl crossed his 7-year-old visage. Had he looked in the mirror, he would have wondered who was staring back. What did these people have against him? What had he ever done? Nothing, save a few rather harmless pranks. They had ignored him even before that. Acknowledgement? Fuck that. He had bigger things to worry about now. Akatsuki. He tested the name of his new enemy. A familiar determination spread through him, igniting his nerves and giving him goosebumps. He'd show them. All of them. No villager, ninja, or even Uchiha Madara himself would stop him. Uzumaki Naruto wasn't going down without a fight, and a damn good one at that. Believe it. // Naruto exhaled slowly as his kick split the air. Pulling it back at the knee, while still keeping the leg airborne, he kicked out once more, just as slowly. He had been doing much of that lately. His new determination to survive had sparked sessions of intense training. Unfortunately, his instructors at the academy had been less than helpful in his endeavors to better himself. They had said he needed a more solid foundation before he could learn more advanced techniques. Naruto was starting to see what they meant. Before, he would have simply brushed their comments off, disregarding them in the face of his undeniable awesomeness. It turned out that he wasn't really that awesome. He had Uchiha Sasuke to thank for that little lesson. Unfortunately, he had apparently made such a bad impression on his teachers that they were unwilling to help, even when he asked for some remedial lessons. That had pissed the blonde off like nothing else. Here he was, swallowing his pride and looking to advance his skills, and they simply brushed him off. Weren't they paid to teach people? Last he checked, he was still a person. Apparently they had more pressing matters to attend to. He had considered appealing to the Hokage, surely he would be able to make them help out, but had hesitated. He had been somewhat wary of the office of late. Itachi's warning still rang true in his ears during his moments of introspection. There will come a time when the Sandame's protection will not be enough. If he couldn't solve a small problem like this without help from the old man, how would he ever be able to survive against a group of ninja dedicated to his death? That decided it. He would deal with his problems on his own. That, naturally, had led him to where he was presently, dancing through the academy's taijutsu katas. Well, more like stumbling through. It turned out that learning taijutsu wasn't all that easy on one's own. Scrolls could only help so much, as one couldn't really be sure if they were doing the move correctly. Stances were hard to gauge, proper footing was impossible to know, one could never be sure of block, and most all but the simplest maneuvers were almost out of reach. If one wanted to do them right, that is. Learning crappy taijutsu from a scroll was easy. Sitting on the grass gently, Naruto pulled a ball of bandages from his hip pouch. He began wrapping his hands. When he didn't move through the katas of the academy, he punched logs. It was boring, mindless, and tedious, but it helped to strengthen his fists and was therefore useful. If it was useful, he did it. That was part of his new nindo, his ninja way. Punching, at least, was something he knew he was doing correctly. It was one of the few things the academy instructors had consented to help him with. It fit the MO of the staff there perfectly, at least in regards to him. They almost never outright refused to help him, and when they did they usually had some contrived reason, but they always did the bare minimum when it came to their help. Useless Chunin, the blonde thought uncharitably. Brooding and negative thoughts weren't something Naruto liked to have most of the time. They certainly didn't help keep his spirits up in regards to his new objective, but he found himself having them more and more. This was especially the case when the various offenses against him kept piling up. Just the other day he had overheard Yamanaka Ino asking for help with her taijutsu, an occurrence that wasn't common, and Irika Sensei had been only too happy to help. Bloody hypocrite. He wasn't sure if these movements against him were new or if he was just more observant of them, but they were all downright annoying. Some were to the point of being deliberately harmful to him. His instructors wouldn't teach him much of anything, shopkeepers sold him crappy goods, if at all, and that didn't even begin to cover how many people outright glared at him when he walked by. His former dreams of acknowledgement and acceptance were becoming distant memories as he noticed the hatred the Konoha populace seemed to have for him. He wondered how he had brushed it off before. Fury spiked through him. What had he done to them? What the hell could he have possibly done to deserve such hatred? The answer was nothing. The training log met his fist with a brutal thunk, and Naruto recoiled in pain before deflating. He had channeled all of his pent-up anger into that punch. He didn't even splinter the wood. Kami, damn it! He cursed softly. He cradled his right arm to his body, watching as the blood seeped through the bandages. He jumped in surprise, startled as a hand came to rest on his shoulder. The sight that met his eyes was an odd one. "It warms my heart indeed to see such youthful fire burning in one so young," the man said. He was dressed in a green leotard, likely made of spandex, orange leg warmers, and a standard flak vest that was issued to all Konoha ninja Chunin and above. Naruto, however, had his eyes fixed on the man's face. Those things above his eyes had to be caterpillars. There was no other explanation for eyebrows that big. "Who are you?" Naruto asked, complete with all the bluntness of a 7-year-old. Who needed tact? Apparently, Madogai didn't, as he introduced himself exuberantly, much to Naruto's confusion. "I couldn't help but notice your practice of taijutsu. A fine endeavor indeed for as young as yourself, but..." He trailed off, his head cocked to the side thoughtfully. The cleverness that had turned Naruto into a rather infamous prankster reared its head violently. "Is there something wrong with my taijutsu, Mado-san?" he asked, sensing an opening. The green-clad man was strong, of that there was no doubt in the boy's mind. If he was willing to help him. "I'm afraid so, Naruto-kun." Naruto hadn't had to introduce himself. For you see, taijutsu is an art that needs to be taught from sensei to student, and scrolls can only take one so far. Guy's voice had adopted a lecturing, almost sage-like quality. "Do not fret, though. Konoha's beautiful green beast would be more than happy to help one so clearly in the springtime of youth." Naruto wasn't quite sure what the man meant about beasts and the like, but he was pretty sure that he had just offered to teach him. That wasn't something he was about to pass up. / 1 month. 4 weeks. If he ever looked back, Naruto was sure that he would remember these past weeks. The aches, pains, and almost never-ending soreness would ensure that. Guy had been impressed with his stamina regardless, but Naruto wished he could have done more. Truly, the man deserved his self-determined moniker. He was a beast indeed. 4 weeks of almost nothing but taijutsu training. He couldn't be happier with his progress. He had been intense at the start, hoping to impress the helpful Jonin enough so that he wouldn't simply brush him off. That had lasted until he had looked the man up. His intensity had likely tripled after that. Madogai. A taijutsu master. The taijutsu master if the records were to be believed. The man was Konoha's foremost expert on the particular branch of the ninja arts. He was also a rather formidable Jonin. He ranked somewhere in Konoha's top 10. And he had just decided to help him, for no other reason than to help out a child full of youthful fire. It was amazing. Looked like even he could catch a lucky break sometimes. The man really knew his subject too. Stances became rigid. Blocks and guards were solidified. Punches, kicks, and other maneuvers became fluid under the man's teaching. His speed had increased too. The eccentric Jonin had been kind enough to foot the bill for a set of leg weights for Naruto, though he had stressed the concept of proper rest. It wouldn't do to injure himself because he bit off more than he could chew. Really, he couldn't have been luckier. The standing invitation to train with him and his youthful student was going to be exploited as much as possible. He knew he was far from a taijutsu master. He likely wasn't even the best in his class. That honor belonged to the enigmatic Uchiha Sasuke, certified genius that he was. Even so, his brief time under Guy's tutelage had placed him at the middle of the pack at the least, as recent spars had shown. He was likely better than that, but it was always best to maintain a humble attitude toward one's own skills. His humility had been forced upon him via necessity. It was all for the best, however, as he was finally starting to make some progress. A solid foundation was the key to future success. Taijutsu hadn't been the only thing that Guy had helped him with. His accuracy had improved tremendously with thrown weapons. His technique had been inefficient, apparently. It wasn't overtly bad and would get the job done, but he lost a lot of potential power behind his throws, and accuracy was hard to come by, especially as he wasn't always using the exact same motion each time. Some of the anger he had felt then threatened to spill out as he shut the door to his apartment, all one room of it. He had learned his throwing technique at the academy. It fit the way the teachers operated perfectly. The taught technique would get the job done. It just wasn't as good as it could or should be. The inferior technique could easily be blamed on Naruto's lack of attention and practice, if it ever came under question. He had vented his anger in the taijutsu work he had done later that day, though some of it still remained. His emotional control wasn't helped any by the liberal helping of glares he received as he wove through Konoha's morning crowds. He kept his eyes firmly forward, if not on his feet. He knew it wasn't below some villagers to cuff him if he appeared antagonistic, especially in a crowd. That had been the start of his bubbly persona. They had no reason to do anything to him if he was constantly friendly and outgoing. What a waste that had been. Striving for their acknowledgement had likely been the largest waste of his time in his 7 years of living. He still did to some extent, as only an emotionally neglected child could, but he had much bigger things to worry about. The game had changed. Striving for the acknowledgement and attention of an antagonistic populace had no place in his fight to survive. It was a refreshing change of mind. Blinking, Naruto noticed with some wonder that his feet had brought him to the academy. Had he really been that lost in thought? He scoffed. His academy instructors would likely have to pick their jaws off the floor if they knew how much he was thinking these days. It clashed horribly with their view of him. That likely wouldn't change for some time, though he suspected his new effort in class would draw some attention. He didn't hold out hope that it would be the good kind. He took his seat with a short nod and smile to Inuzuka Kiba. The canine ninja was one of his running buddies whenever they had decided to cut class, though Naruto was seriously cutting back. "Any idea what T-Day's lecture's gonna be about?" he asked Nara Shikamaru gruffly. The boy was smart. He was also lazy. He thought he was likely the laziest person in all of Fire Country. Akimichi Shihoji disagreed. He thought he was the laziest person in the whole elemental nations. The boy grunted. He was obviously too bothered to answer. Sleep was a full-time job for Shikamaru, much like eating was a full-time job for Choji. Naruto didn't complain. He often got to mooch some of the boy's endless chips. "Too troublesome to answer?" he asked with a foxy grin. The lack of answer was expected. "Bah, it'll probably be boring all the same. Right, Choji?" "Probably, Naruto." "Chip?" "Thanks, mate." The lecture was boring. Not that that was ever truly in question. While Naruto admitted that the scarred Chunin knew his stuff, he could at least make an effort to make it somewhat engaging. It didn't help matters that the information likely wouldn't serve any purpose beyond the academy tests. Who really needed to know about the mysterious figure that was the Shodai's wife? Not everyone was Haruno Sakura or Yamanaka Ino with their academic drive. A soft smile rose to the blonde's face as he thought about the pretty blonde-haired girl. After the lecture, Irika brought the class to the weapons range. Each student had a slot where they were supposed to sink 6 shuriken, the standard brace size, into the target. It was harder than Irika and Mizuki, his assistant, made it look. Practice normally went on for half an hour, while the two instructors would make their way through the group of students and correct them where they saw fit. Naruto was often left for last. More often than not, his instruction got cut off when the practice ended. He could deal with that though. Accuracy was one thing that could be improved on one's own. Now that his technique was fixed up, he hoped that his accuracy would rise. It proved true not a few moments later. He smiled in satisfaction as he caught his breath. It had become heavier as he put force into the throws. 4 of the 6 were embedded in the target. One was not even an inch off the bullseye. 2/3 was good, considering he was barely at 1/3 just a month ago. Progress was slow, he thought as he removed the shuriken from the target, but it was still progress. Moving back to his starting line, he launched all 6 stars again, this time one at a time. 4 out of the 6 stuck again, but one had glanced off another, the angle so perfect that it had directed the shuriken into the bullseye. His smirk threatened to split his face when he caught sight of Irika's raised brows. "What did you think of that, Irika-sensei?" he asked obnoxiously. The scarred man called an end to practice without an answer. He'd have to work on that trick. It might come in handy someday, though he suspected that it might be easier with kunai. The short blades were a larger target by design, they were also heavier, making it easier to effect them in flight while still keeping on target. Shuriken were too light for that sort of intentional showmanship. The rest of the class didn't need to know that though. Uchiha Sasuke had an unknown look on his face. It seemed calculating to Naruto's untrained eyes, but who was to say? From target practice, the class moved to the center of the academy's designated training ground. That meant it was time for sparring. The one-on-one bouts were viewed by the whole class. Once the fight was finished, the instructor, be it Irika or Mizuki, would review the fight with the class as a whole. They often went over strategy and what worked and what didn't. The students were often tasked with coming up with their own solutions to the problems they had, the idea being that one learned more if they fixed the problem themselves. The instructors were always available to help, however. At least if your name wasn't Uzumaki Naruto. The fights proceeded without incident. Kiba had too much focus on full frontal attacks. Shikamaru was too defensive. Shoji made openings for himself, but hesitated too much. Sakura needed more punching power. Ino needed a haircut, though not much else. Shino was too stiff with his movements. Hinata hesitated twice as much as Chuji, though her juken made up for most of her other faults. In the end, it was down to Naruto and Sasuke. Naruto didn't know the meaning of the word cliché, but that's how he would have described it if he did. Irika-sensei was most likely trying to take him down a peg or 5. Uchiha Sasuke was the class resident genius. No one save Shino and Kiba had ever managed to get more than a glancing blow on the boy. Naruto didn't much care. The class spread out from the two fighters. The combatants were encouraged to use their environment to their advantage, so being too close to the fight was just asking for trouble. Suitably competitive fighters wouldn't hesitate to bowl over anyone who happened to get in their way. Naruto winced in remembrance of when he was used as a shield by Ino when she had fought Sakura 2 classes previous. He didn't quite know where the instructors got off telling the girl she needed more punching power. Naruto bounced on the balls of his feet as the crowd of students backed up. Guy's lessons about having an explosive first step sounded loudly through his mind. The initiative could decide the outcome of a fight better than any level of skill. Most shinobi fights didn't last long enough for true skill to shine through. Irika signaled the start of the fight. Naruto sprang forward, hoping to steal the initiative. His right leg shot out in a near-perfect mid-air roundhouse kick. He hit nothing but air as Sasuke ducked under the strike. The raven-haired boy didn't wait for Naruto to recover. snapping a quick kick at Naruto's chest from his low position. The blonde blocked with both arms crossed, but winced lightly as the kick connected. Sasuke wasn't much bigger than him, but he hit hard. Doesn't matter, Naruto thought fiercely. His landing was less graceful than he would have liked, but he regained his footing nonetheless. It wasn't a moment too soon, as Naruto moved his face to the left to avoid Sasuke's fist. The displaced air whispered across his skin as he moved inside the Uchiha's guard, snapping off a backhand fist that connected solidly with Sasuke's face. If the Uchiha was surprised at being hit, he didn't show it. The boy rolled with the punch, and snapped off one of his own that was blocked by Naruto's face. The two separated quickly, Naruto blinking back tears of pain. He glared fiercely at his opponent, though his feeble attempt to turn him to ash failed. Muscles flexed, coiled, and uncoiled as the two boys threw themselves back into the fight, each looking for almost non-existent openings in each other's guard. Naruto, so far, was thoroughly pleased with the encounter. He had held his own quite well. He had watched the Uchiha's fights closely in the past months, and he had managed to develop a thin sort of strategy. The best plans were the flexible ones. His first hope for the fight had been to take the initiative early. That attempt had failed rather easily, and he now had to re-evaluate his options. He made a split-second decision. Leaping headfirst into the fray, Naruto jumped inside the larger boy's guard but, instead of immediately attacking, feinted forward. Sasuke reacted instinctively, bringing his right arm into a textbook guard, but was unprepared for Naruto to grab the offending appendage. From there, life was good for the blonde as he laid two heavy haymakers into the Uchiha's face before the raven-haired boy managed to wrench himself from Naruto's grip. Sasuke made to make space, but Naruto wasn't giving up that easily. Charging forward, Naruto made to strike high, but dropped at the last moment and performed a textbook leg sweep. The Uchiha was knocked off his feet, but acquitted himself nicely by landing a solid kick to Naruto's stomach. The raven-haired boy landed an uppercut to Naruto's chin, but received a smack to both ears in return. Naruto, reeling from the blow, shook his head before charging low. The Uchiha was unprepared for the blonde's bum rush maneuver, and had the wind knocked out of him as he hit the ground hard. Naruto, while both smaller and lighter than Sasuke, had unintentionally managed to position himself perfectly on top of his opponent, ensuring that Sasuke couldn't maneuver his body to a certain extent. Leaning forward, he laid into the Uchiha, landing 5 hard punches to the boy's face. Victory was in his sights, as Iruka would surely call the match. Naruto peripherally felt a pair of legs snap around his neck, and blinked in confusion as he saw a victorious snarl cross Sasuke's face. He opened his eyes blearily. "Huh, the sky is really blue, isn't it?" he thought. A scarred face disrupted his view. "Nay, Iruka-sensei. You ruined my view," he complained loudly. The sound of laughter assaulted his ears, and he turned his head in order to view his tittering classmates. "Get up, Naruto," Iruka demanded. Naruto noticed it wasn't quite as harsh as usual. He brushed it off, it wasn't important. He reluctantly obliged the chunin, though his body seemed to protest. Loudly. "As you were unconscious at the time, you don't know what the class went over after your fight. I suggest you get the notes from one of your classmates," the instructor stated stiffly. Naruto just nodded in acceptance. His memories of the fight were flowing back rather steadily. His only mistake had been leaning too low over Sasuke when he had him pinned. Being too low allowed for one's opponent to apply a leg chokehold. Sasuke had apparently demonstrated this rather well, as Naruto managed to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. He grimaced as feeling returned to his neck. Blue eyes sought Onyx as Naruto glanced about. He spied Sasuke with an ice pack held to his jaw. He glared balefully at those who attempted to help him. Apparently, he didn't need any help. The newly forming bruises on his face didn't agree. As Naruto caught the clan heir's attention, he nodded, hoping to convey the message "good fight" through the simple gesture. Surprisingly, Sasuke nodded back. // A 12-year-old Naruto sputtered as he spit grass out of his mouth. "I guess this is what they mean by eating dirt." It was a rare occurrence, thankfully. The taste of grass and dirt was not one that Naruto wanted to get used to. Unfortunately, his sparring partner had other ideas. Naruto didn't even flinch as he narrowly avoided a chakra-enhanced haymaker. He had enough bruises coming from this fight already. He wasn't about to let Sasuke land a near-cheap shot on his face that easily. The blonde danced out of the way of his sparring partner's follow kick easily. It looked almost choreographed in its simplicity. Footwork changed, stances flowed, and Naruto sprang forward with the force of a cannon, his weight and chakra carefully flowing into his outstretched elbow. Air whistled past his ears and he snarled happily as Sasuke was only able to redirect the blow. The elbow had caught him in the right shoulder, spinning him round. 2 steps and a minor weight adjustment later, Naruto's left-footed roundhouse kick had sent Sasuke hurtling toward a nearby tree. The boy managed to right himself in mid-air, and landed gracefully. Red eyes regarded Naruto balefully as their owner clutched his chest. Blue eyes narrowed and Naruto sighed inwardly. Sasuke had activated his Sharingan not a full year ago. He had managed to get dragged into testing its limits, as the young Uchiha put it. He could say, with full honesty, that he hated those eyes. It had been more than difficult to keep up the clan air before he had activated his Kekkai Genkai. Now it was nearly impossible. His taijutsu superiority had all but disappeared in the last year, his tri-weekly sessions with Guy having little effect overall. That wasn't to say that he wasn't improving. It was just that Sasuke's already high learning curve became even higher. Bloody genius. The Uchiha had made one of the smarter decisions of his life once he had activated the famed Jujutsu. He had decided against letting the world know about it. Naruto heartily approved. A shinobi always had his secrets. Just like Naruto would never let Sasuke know that he wore a full set of both leg and arm weights under his long-sleeved clothing. It wouldn't do well to reveal his trump card. Naruto was sure that Sasuke had a few tricks up his short sleeves as well. Naruto absently dodged a high kick to the neck, and moved swiftly under its follow-up. Snapping out a palm, he felt the heel of his hand just miss its target, Sasuke's eyes allowing him to predict the motion before it was complete. The offending appendage was grabbed tightly, but pushed himself forward, rather than back, throwing Sasuke off balance. Panting his feet and reshifting, Naruto used his superior strength to hurl Sasuke over his shoulder. The boy landed just as gracefully as before, however, and Naruto grimaced. A neutral fight was pretty much all he could hope for once Sasuke brought out his eyes. The acclaimed genius might not be fully experienced with the dojutsu, but he learned fast. And those eyes taught on their own. Naruto wasn't about to go full speed at the boy, even with his weights on. They both held back considerably here, neither wanted to be injured in a spar that meant nothing. Naruto was similarly reluctant to break out the few ninjutsu he knew. While they might turn the tide in the short term, it would only hurt him in the long term. Sasuke knew a few ninjutsu himself, and there was no doubt that the Sharingan would copy everything Naruto threw at him anyway. Life just wasn't fair sometimes. Though it wasn't fair nearly all the time, in the case of Naruto. As such, he was often left taking a beating from his sparring partner. He consoled himself with the knowledge that he was getting better just as much, even if his progress was that much slower than the prodigal Uchihas. The two rushed each other at some unspoken signal, and 2 punches were caught with a smack of skin on skin. They separated just as quickly, each one making space. Each dodged the other's punch this time, Naruto by a lesser margin than Sasuke, and the blonde kicked out. 2 shins met in the middle and each boy winced. Leaping back, the two regarded each other with calculating eyes, each assessing the other. Naruto smiled. Well. HN. Sasuke nodded. The two relaxed immediately. Naruto collapsed heavily against a nearby tree, Sasuke joined him moments later. Not bad, in my esteemed opinion, at least. Sasuke snorted. If your opinion mattered, the standard Konoha uniform would be entirely orange and there would be a yearly ramen festival. It's not my fault nobody recognizes what an awesome color orange is. He didn't bother refuting the second part of the statement. Why don't you wear it then? I do wear it, just not during training, Naruto trailed off lamely. The truth was, orange was a horrible color for shinobi. It had taken Naruto about a full year into his stint at the academy to realize that orange wasn't a practical color for a shinobi. In fact, it was a downright horrible color for a ninja. That was doubly so for a Konoha ninja, given the general greenery of the area. One of Naruto's lesser-known goals was to one day be skilled enough for his color of choice not to matter. Even he knew that that day was far, far in the future. Anyway, back on topic? Naruto began. Poof. The response was almost eloquent in its simplicity. Naruto would forever envy Sasuke's ability to sound cool with such a minimal response. Not that anyone would ever find out. Not bad, I suppose. The hits are harder, more precise. You've gotten faster. The unasked question went unanswered. Every ninja had their tricks. Sasuke would never know about Naruto's leg weights if the blonde had anything to say about it. Naruto nodded seriously, silently appreciating the bluntness of the conversation. Neither of them liked to dick around. Thanks. About the same for my end. You've managed to include a few new moves since last time. Getting your techniques stolen was an occupational hazard of training with a Sharingan user. Naruto didn't much mind. He was essentially bastardizing Goku's style as it was. Complaining about his training partner stealing it would be hypocritical. As long as the Uchiha didn't take any of his ninjutsu, few that they were, he was just fine. Guy teach you anything new? Naruto shrugged. I'm working on some things, but nothing's done just yet. It's more internal chakra stuff than anything else. Useful? The thought of Naruto learning a new technique, and then his copying of it, was something of interest to the Uchiha. Maybe. Now Sasuke was really interested. Naruto didn't deflect questions very often. He didn't have the mental capacity or personality, in Sasuke's opinion at least. His dodging of the question spoke volumes about how useful this technique might actually be. Sasuke knew better than to push, though. Naruto would lock up tighter than the Hokage's private ANBU security detail. Good for tomorrow? Naruto asked, trying to move the conversation forward. Sasuke actually laughed, though it was more of a chuckle. Is that a question, idiot? Naruto had the grace to blush. Sasuke was the #1 rookie for a reason. Ah, guess not. Not worried then? Of course not. I'd be more worried about yourself, Dobe. Righteous anger quickly bubbled to the surface. I haven't been dead last for 4 years now, team. Why do you have to call me that? Guess it just stuck. Why do you call me team? Sasuke reflected the question with unearthly skill. It fits. Don't, he exclaimed when Sasuke looked about to interrupt. The boy settled for a vicious smirk. You're a total douche to everyone. Team makes sense. Dead last isn't a great nickname for the #2 in class. The smirk never left the Uchiha's face. Maybe, Dobe. Naruto sputtered in indignation. He was ignored. Still, second best is still last in my book. Good thing your book isn't the grade book, then. If those damned written tests didn't mean so much, you'd actually have to work some to keep that one spot. Sasuke got up to make his exit from the training ground, idly wiping the residual dirt from his shorts. As if, Uzumaki. Try not to fail tomorrow. You too, asshole. Naruto flipped him off. Sasuke just snorted. They were friends. Naruto didn't bother to watch as Sasuke disappeared from his sightline. His mind was on other things. More important things. Tomorrow marked the true beginning of his ninja career. He wouldn't be too ashamed to admit that he was more than a little nervous. Not for the graduation test, he was second in his class for a good reason. No, he was nervous because for every step towards skill and power he took, it was one more step toward his enemies. Akatsuki, he thought with hatred, though it wasn't particularly focused. He didn't know who they were. He didn't know what they were after. All he knew was that they were strong enough that Konoha wouldn't be able to protect him for long. Every minute of every hour of every day he had spent training was working toward the eventual confrontation he would have with the organization. He would be ready. Believe it. His body was awake and alert the moment the alarm began to blare. Blue Eyes snapped to attention and regarded his room with earnest. The ceiling was still off-white, the wallpaper was peeling off in the appropriate places, and the sun filtered in through the two thin blinds. This was home. Naruto sat up blearily, idly turning off his alarm. Bloody annoyance. The blonde shook his head quickly, shaking out the cobwebs of sleep that had been overridden by his momentary alertness. If there was no immediate threat or interesting action being performed, the body reverted back to what it always was in the morning. Being tired. Naruto hated mornings. He slipped his slippers on as he rose. A pot of water for tea was boiling before he made his way to the bathroom to complete his daily morning routine. One leak and a cup of tea later, his blue eyes had their usual intensity back. They would remain so for the next 16 hours at the least. It was 7 minutes past 7 when Naruto finished his tea. Just enough time to properly dress and make his way to the academy. He pulled on a pair of black pants with a forest green short-sleeve top over them. Black shinobi sandals completed his ensemble, along with carefully wrapped bandages along his lower claves and forearms. His ankle weights were carefully concealed beneath his pant legs. His weapons pouches were strapped in their appropriate places. The lights were off and his major appliances had been unplugged as he left his studio apartment. The landlord didn't need any real excuse to charge him more for electricity. A minor application of chakra masked his appearance as he exited his apartment building, and he began to weave his way through the busy morning traffic of Konoha. The brown-haired youth gently pushed his way into one of the many stalls that lined Konoha's streets. It was one of his favorite breakfast haunts. Uzumaki Naruto wasn't allowed. The brown-haired, brown-eyed Kimi Lee had no such problems. He munched on a breakfast roll happily as he bobbed and wove through the thick crowds. A smile crossed his unwhiskered face as he enjoyed the feeling of having no eyes on him. Well, save for the ANBU on the rooftops. It was one of his guilty pleasures. There was much happiness to be had simply from not being noticed or glared at by the general populace. It was too bad it didn't last after he removed his minor henge. His arrival at Konoha's Ninja Academy coincided with his finishing of his breakfast roll. He carefully cleaned his hands with a napkin and water from the fountain near the academy's entrance. Ruffling his hair as he approached the classroom, a smirk threatened to split his face. He pushed the door to the room open to be met with the raised voices of the 20 or so students who were already there. All of them seemed to be trying to talk over each other, though he noticed a few nervous souls doing some last-minute studying in the corner. It was graduation, and Uzumaki Naruto was about to arrive. Believe it. "It's me, bitches," he announced as he swaggered in. Kiba snorted up top. Choji snickered around his mouthful of chips. Shikamaru simply laid his head on the desk. He was probably already asleep. Taxing activities like expressions were far too troublesome for the Nara. "A little confident, Naruto?" Choji asked good-naturedly. "With good reason, mate," Naruto said as he strode up the wooden steps to his seat. He tossed a quick wink to a few tittering girls at the front. His already large smirk became absolutely devilish as they blushed. "Take that, Sasuke." "Bah! Cocky, that's what you are," Kiba barked from his position. "You know full well that Akamaru and me could take you any day." "Don't be so sure about that, doggy boy. You'd probably be a handicap for Akamaru over there." At Kiba's growl, Naruto held up a hand. "Don't even bother. We all know who wears the pants in your relationship. Ain't that right, Akamaru?" The small dog yipped happily in response. Choji laughed as Kiba grumbled about traitorous partners. Even Shikamaru managed a snort. Now that was something of note. Naruto expected the lazy boy to be fast asleep by now. He certainly had no problems with doing so in the past. He and Shuji often talked about how they thought the boy could likely sleep standing up. If it wasn't too troublesome, of course. "Chips, Naruto?" Shuji asked. The blonde declined politely. "Nervous? Eating can take your mind off the test, you know?" "Nah, mate." Naruto shook his head. The confident smirk had faded, it was replaced by a serious look that seemed out of place on the usually smiling visage. "I figure I got to number 2 already. That counts for something." Chucky just shrugged, so Kiba picked up the slack, having finished licking his proverbial wounds. "You sure about that? My sister graduated a few years back. She was downright bitchy in the lead up. Said it was the hardest thing she ever studied for." Naruto copied Chuji in his manner of expression. "Maybe. It's a 3-parter. Written, ninjutsu, and taijutsu. I've had the ninjutsu down for a couple of years now, and my taijutsu had been top for almost the same." He wasn't bragging, simply stating facts. "That's 2 out of 3 right there, and my written tests have gotten better. I figure that I've got this, even if I don't finish top." His own speech seemed to have eased some of the tension among the small group. His casual recounting of his own skills had reminded his contemporaries that they were similarly qualified, if not quite as good. A merry band of misfits they may be, but they weren't incompetent. At least not entirely. The momentary reverie was broken by the sound of squealing. Naruto winced appropriately as the overly loud voices of Haruno Sakura and Yamanaka Ino reached his ears. "I'm gonna sit next to him." "No, I am, Inopig." "Fat chance, forehead girl." Cute girls they may be, but it was far too early for their pointless squabbles over the widely coveted seat next to Uchiha Sasuke. Naruto winced in sympathy for the raven-haired boy. He, along with the rest of the male population, was more than a little jealous of the good-looking Uchiha. That didn't mean he wanted to have the twin harpies crowing over him 24/7. The two were rapidly approaching their object of affection, and the boy in question looked none too happy. Naruto decided to take pity on his friend for the moment, and perhaps the girls, given the look the boy had on his face, as a brilliant idea struck him. Catching Sasuke's eye, he made 4 hand seals. The boy simply rolled his eyes in irritation. Naruto took that as his cue. Speeding through the seals, Naruto executed a textbook Kawarimi no Jutsu with Sasuke, just as Yamanaka Ino claimed the coveted seat. "Ha! Take that, forehead. True love prevails, isn't that right, Sasuke-kun?" Naruto struggled to keep a straight face as the blonde girl's triumphant look turned to confusion as she spied Naruto's raised eyebrow. Her head turned around rather comically as she searched for the boy she thought she was sitting next to. She found him. He looked just as he always did, perfectly unruffled from the impromptu Kawarimi. Naruto took that as a show of his own skill, rather than Sasuke's innate coolness. His ego need to stay inflated somehow. The rousing laughter from Kiba and Shuji, combined with Sasuke's twitching mouth, connected the dots in the minds of the two kunoichi. Ino opened her mouth to lambaste Naruto, but was cut off by the entrance of Naruto's 2 least favorite people. "Everyone sit down and shut up!" Umano Iroke yelled. Ino had no choice but to sit in the vacant seat next to Naruto, while Sakura took a seat next to a quivering Hyuga Hinata. "This is the graduation exam. Take it seriously," were the words of wisdom from the scarred academy teacher. His silver-haired assistant Turji Mizuki silently passed out the written portion of the exam. Naruto ignored the scowl that crossed the man's face as he received his test. The animosity between himself and the academy instructors hadn't waned in the last years of Naruto's academy stint. Iruka had seemed to warm to him for a time, but Naruto had remained wary of the man. If he had befriended every person who was suddenly nice to him, he wouldn't be here now. The somewhat half-hearted attempts at friendship with the scarred man had all but disappeared. "You have 1 hour. Begin." The scarred instructor's voice barely penetrated Naruto's thoughts. He opened his test and silently regarded the 45 questions. He sighed. I hate tests. Question 1. The following 256-character message needs to be decoded. Determine the cipher necessary and explain its concept. Naruto's mind filtered through the various ciphers he knew of before deciding on one. It was correct. He had gone with the most basic one he knew. It was one of the 3 that were taught at the academy. The fact that he had memorized over 10 more on his own time spoke of his dedication to the shinobi lifestyle. Question 2. The position of shinobi marked A in relation to the position of shinobi marked B is defined by the following equation. Derive the velocity and acceleration functions from the position function as related to time. Fucking math. He hated math. It was tedious, boring, and nearly useless in the practical sense. When would he ever have to derive equations in the field? Never, that's when. Thankfully, he had a little shortcut, courtesy of the archive. N times A times T to the N1, bitches. Who needs math? Question 3. Given the derived equations, calculate the instantaneous velocity and acceleration at time equals 2.7 seconds of a thrown shuriken from shinobi A to shinobi B. A simple plug and chug problem. They were easy as long as you had the equations right. Living on Easy Street, he thought with a grin. Question 4. Given the height of shinobi A and the distance between him and shinobi B, draw the appropriate parabola describing the projectile motion of a thrown shuriken from shinobi A to shinobi B. Calculate the angle of depression and the angle of elevation. Shit, he couldn't do this one. He vaguely remembered Irika's lectures on projectile motion, but only vaguely. Mizuki must have been the one to finish up that particular lesson. There was a reason he was the assistant. Question 5. Describe the effect Konohakusa relations had on the outbreak of the Third Secret War. Utilize the space below and summarize in less than 200 words. History. It was boring as hell, but pretty easy. All it was memorizing dates and names. It had no real importance in the field though. Naruto supposed that it might be important to know if one was in the administrative service. It was important to learn from history. At least that was what the proverb said. And the questions continued on in that vein. By the end of the hour, Naruto had answered all but 8 of the questions on the test. The more practical questions were fairly easy for the blonde, while the math and written physics were the opposite. History was somewhere in the middle. He exchanged nods with a bored-looking Sasuke and even more bored-looking Shikamaru as the tests were collected. The taijutsu portion of the exam was next, and he was eager to see how much Sasuke would reveal. They were both better than they let show in class. There was simply no need to show off more than they already did. What did you think? He asked the group of Shikamaru, Shoji, and Kiba. Sasuke was slightly ahead of them and unlikely to participate in the conversation. He was Naruto's friend, not everyone else's. Not too bad, troublesome, and piece of cake were the answers that greeted Naruto. It was all he really expected from his academy friends. None of them excelled at written tests, and, as such, didn't hold them in much regard. Save for Shikamaru, whose mind was likely on what he would do after the exam, they all were focused on the coming taijutsu portion of the exam. All the graduates will fight me in a one-on-one spar until I or Irika deem that we have seen enough. You guys know the drill. The silver-haired man's boredom was evident in his voice. He attempted to smile to lighten some of the tension hovering over the group, but it came out as a grimace. Don't hold back and good luck. Don't hold back and good luck, Mizuki stated for what must have been the 30th time since the spars had begun. It had begun to wear on Naruto. That and the general level of incompetency he saw clearly in his fellow students. He could only imagine how Irika and Mizuki felt, having taught the bunch. His clique had done well, though. That was a good thing at least. Kiba had been downright vicious. The blonde watched dispassionately as Sasuke danced around Mizuki's strikes. His fan club was cheering him from the sidelines. Not for the first time did Naruto envy the prodigy's inherent grace. No matter how much he worked or trained, he knew that Sasuke would always look better than him when fighting hand to hand. Grace couldn't be taught. Bastard. His eyes didn't change as he watched Sasuke take the upper hand with a well-placed thrust kick that had Mizuki stumbling. Irika could have called the match right there. Mizuki was finished, but he allowed Sasuke to show off his skills. He snorted when Sasuke planted his knee in the man's gut to end the match. Mizuki looked none too happy with his partner. Naruto exchanged nods with the genius as he made his way to the ring. Sasuke hadn't shown much more than he ever did in the academy spars. Naruto would do the same. It wasn't that he had anything to hide, really, but going all out wasn't really necessary. Irika and Mizuki were total scrubs when it came to taijutsu as far as he knew. It made him wonder why they were teaching. Don't hold back and good luck. The platitude couldn't have been less sincere if Naruto had been the rakeage. Begin! Naruto hopped forward immediately, launching a hard roundhouse kick at Mizuki's head. It was blocked, though Naruto got satisfaction from the man's wince. The added weight around his ankles hadn't helped matters. Grunting, he shifted his weight while mid-air, bringing his other leg around for a dropping heel. Mizuki dove under the leg and rolled to safety. Naruto landed gracefully and bounced on his toes in anticipation. Mizuki didn't disappoint. Naruto calmly redirected a palm strike to his throat and ducked inside the man's guard and swung a punch. It connected solidly, but Mizuki rolled with the blow and Naruto added another bruise to his collection from a kick to his right arm. It was all good though. Mizuki didn't hit nearly as hard as Lee. Naruto leaped over a wide sweeping kick and coiled his body into a controlled haymaker. Coil and uncoil. Let the body's weight and flexibility be your power. The haymaker hit home with a thump and Naruto followed up with a quick sweep of the man's legs. He caught the defensive kick aimed at his chin and used the momentum to turn the catch into a throw. Mizuki landed heavily in the dust, but regained his bearings quickly. Naruto scowled as he fought the instinct to follow up with a Konoha Senpu that would have laid the instructor out. It wasn't necessary for this fight, he told himself. The blonde wondered why the match hadn't been called yet. Surely he had made a good show so far. A quick glance to Irika showed a calculating look in the man's eyes. Naruto smirked a little. He was obviously letting this play out like he had with the previous match. It was probably to see how much Naruto actually knew. The thought was broken up as he took a punch to the face. He cursed his inattention. Sasuke wouldn't have done that. Mizuki came in low with a stomach-level punch. Naruto worked in some Tai Chi transferring body weight. The blonde redirected all of Mizuki's momentum away from him. The man was stumbling as inertia took over. The instructor didn't know what hit him as Naruto capitalized on his opportunity and buried his foot in his back. The boy took more than a little satisfaction in forcing his teacher to eat dirt. Match. Irika called. The man looked genuinely impressed. It was one thing to knock your classmates around in the spars. It was something else to do it to your instructor. Even so, Mizuki likely wasn't going all out. Naruto did his best to remain humble in the face of overwhelming victory. It was easier said than done as a smirk threatened to split his face. Yamanaka Ino was called as Naruto exited the ring to polite clapping from the rest of the class. Sasuke was smirking. Kiba was howling. Shoji looked happy. Shikamaru looked bored. How about that, Sasuke-chan? He asked with a teasing smirk. Oof. Not bad, Dobe, but you took a few too many shots to the head. I'd worry about your intelligence if you weren't already so stupid. Naruto just laughed. Whatever, bastard. I'd beat your time all the same. The boy in question turned his head. I still looked better doing it, idiot. Bah! The rest of the group watched the banter with varying degrees of amusement. It was well known that Naruto was pretty much the only one that Sasuke got along with, and that their verbal spars had no real heat behind them. The barb tossing simply served as amusement for the rest of them. The group chatted back and forth as Ino finished her match with Mizuki. Naruto smirked as he annoyed the blonde girl by cheering for her obnoxiously. She scowled at him venomously, looking at him like he was something to be wiped off her sandal. It was fun to rile her up. Naruto calmly accepted a bag of chips from Chuji as the group of hopefuls was led back into the academy. All that remained was the ninjutsu test. Naruto wasn't worried. They were immediately told to sit down and prepare for the final third of the exam. Apparently the examiners wanted to get this over with. This was the normal time to break for lunch. Chuji was distraught. Troublesome, listen, Chuji. Your name's at the top of the call sheet. Get it done quick and get out of here for some food, Shikamaru suggested to his friend. Naruto watched with amusement as the large boy's eyes lit with renewed determination. Chuji was too easy to manipulate. The shadow user was particularly adept at it. The two had known each other since birth, nearly, and Shikamaru knew Chuji nearly as well as he knew himself. Naruto tapped his fingers against the wooden desk as he waited to be called. The ninjutsu test was the most important of the three, and Naruto was eager to get it over with. He was far from nervous. He had mastered each of the three academy jutsu a few years back. All that he cared about at this point were class placements. That and getting the fuck out of the academy. He was sick of the entire establishment. Satisfaction welled up inside him every time he remembered his time at the academy. His Chunin oppressors had tried their level best to discourage his learning for years. They had failed. Everything short of outright sabotage had been tried, including not answering his questions and sending him outside for disrupting the class. It didn't matter. They kicked him out, he learned on his own. They eventually stopped trying. It wasn't worth the effort apparently, especially as he managed to take the 2 spot in the rankings over 2 years ago. It had been a long, hard, and tedious 5 years, but he had made it. Uzumaki Naruto. Iruka called. And now he was just a few hand seals away from victory. Let's get his over with. Transform into a copy of a person of your choosing, the scarred instructor commanded. Naruto made 3 hand seals. He was replaced with the neutral visage and form of the Sandaime Hokage. Iruka marched around him for a few moments to inspect the image. His technique was perfect. It had been since he had mastered it all those years ago. Very good, Naruto. Replace yourself with that chair to your left, if you will. The man gestured to the aforementioned object. Naruto sped through the 5 hand seals with little effort. A chair stood in his place not a second later. Iruka looked impressed. There hadn't been any smoke or noise to accompany the technique. He had passed it off as a fluke when it had happened with the henge, but it appeared that Naruto had mastered the academy jutsu to a higher level than his classmates. Iruka nodded at Naruto's raised eyebrow. And the Bunshin no Jutsu. Produce 3. Naruto made 5 seals and carefully regulated his chakra. 3 perfect clones shimmered to life next to him, and Naruto couldn't contain his elation. Yada! The clone technique had been his worst by far. That had lasted until he had stumbled upon the mysterious and frustrating concept of chakra control. 2 months, 3 trees, and an endless amount of leaves later, Naruto had mastered the Bunshin. Iruka couldn't help his smile at the boy's enthusiasm. Congratulations, Naruto, you are now an official shinobi of Konohagakure no Sato. Take your headband to the right and check by the administration office for your required paperwork. May you burn with the will of fire. // Well, Naruto, I suppose things do turn out well in the end sometimes. Would you agree? The blonde nodded. His electric blue eyes sparkled in the lantern-lit atmosphere of Ichiraku Ramen. Sometimes, old man, sometimes. He trailed off with a smile. He could scarcely remember being so giddy. Surpassing all expectations of you had a way of doing that. Well, I'd offer you a free bowl, but I'm afraid that business hasn't quite been as good since I lost my best customer." The old man had a slight smile on his face as he said it. Naruto didn't believe the kind old man for a second. "Please, old man, you know full well that you've been doing just fine." "Ayam-chan said you might be planning an expansion," Naruto said with a smirk. "Bah! Ayam, what have I told you about letting slip confidential information?" The man called back to the kitchen area. The smile never left his face. "It's Naruto, Dad. Besides, you weren't going to keep it secret for long." The voice of Ichiraku Ayam floated upon the ramen-scented air from the kitchen. It held a teasing lilt to it. "Humph, I sense a conspiracy here." Naruto laughed along with the small family. It was amazing how two people in a steaming bowl of ramen could make him feel right at home. He couldn't imagine another place he would rather be to celebrate his graduation. Don't worry about it, old man. I won't tell no one." He slurped his ramen happily. "Sides, weren't you the one who told me that I needed a more balanced diet? If I had known that I'd all but lose my best customer, I would have lived with you being a shrimp." Naruto snorted. The kind old man and his daughter had been his first friends in the village. It was quite the experience for young Naruto to know that someone actually cared about his well-being outside of the very basics. The old man had all but insisted that he move to a more balanced diet. When he entered the Ninja Academy. "Ramen's a great food, best in the world, but a growing boy needs some things that ramen just doesn't have," he had said. Regardless, Naruto still made a point to stop by and order a bowl or three once a week. He would have happily lived on ramen alone if it meant keeping the atmosphere and attitude that the Ichirakus provided. It was too bad that his sense of survival all but demanded his compliance with the old man's order for a more rounded diet. He wouldn't survive long if he was malnourished. "It's good to know that my well-being is at the front of your mind, Tochi-san. So, what's this expansion you're planning?" Naruto asked. He was genuinely curious. Ichiraku Tuchi took a seat next to the blonde. "Well, you probably don't know, but a few of my friends in the business have fallen on some hard times lately. They had to close down their stalls recently, and I came up with the idea of a joint business venture. While it would still be under my name, the three of us would co-own the shop/restaurant, and it would cater to all 3 meals of the day. A roll shop for breakfast, ramen for lunch, and grilled meats for dinner. It's the full package." The man was very excited at the idea of finally developing his stall into a full-time restaurant. Naruto was happy for the man. It was tough for the two Ichirakus to support themselves with a simple ramen stand. A full-blown restaurant would likely triple their income. "Sounds like a good idea to me, old man. When do you start remodeling?" "In about a month. I've filled out the paperwork for the lease on the building across the way, and we'll begin setting up shop once it's been filed," he proclaimed. "Well, good luck to you." Naruto was happy for the two people who he considered family, but he was also sad to lose the homie stand that had served as his hangout and thinking place for the entirety of his childhood. The bell to the stall rang. Tucci was behind the counter before Naruto even noticed he had left his spot. "Welcome to Ichiraku Ramen. How may I help you?" "1 bowl of pork ramen. Medium please," a familiar voice ordered. "Coming right up, Iraka-san." Naruto's eyes snapped to meet the brown orbs of his sensei. Former sensei, he reminded himself. Iraka-sensei? He kept the honorific as it sounded weird to address him casually. "Naruto, I thought I might find you here." The scarred man addressed his former pupil casually. Naruto caught an undertone of hesitation in the man's voice. The Chunin sighed before a small smile blossomed. "I want to congratulate you again on passing the exam. You did much better than many had expected. Myself included." Naruto thanked the man. "And don't worry, the paperwork will be filled out by end of day tomorrow. But I think that simple congrats wouldn't warrant a visit like this." Naruto was immediately suspicious of the man when he had first entered the stand. Iraka was silent for a few moments as he slurped his ramen. "You're right, of course. A simple congratulations wouldn't require me to seek you out. He sighed, looking somewhat lost. Naruto wondered what could cause this side of his sensei to show itself. I wanted to apologize. That stopped Naruto in his tracks. So shocked he was, that he didn't even bother to respond to the unexpected proclamation. Irika picked up where he left off. I know that I treated you like crap when you first came to the academy. Hell, I didn't treat you much better afterwards, but I suppose I saw you as a bit of a younger version of myself. Here the Chunin smiled lightly. I was quite the little troublemaker myself, you know. Through the haze of confusion the unexpected apology brought on, the last sentence penetrated Naruto's consciousness. No way. He could hardly believe that Irika, the stickler for the rules, had been anything but a model student when he was younger. Believe it, the man stated, imitating one of Naruto's favorite lines. Anyway, I suppose that led me to being harder on you than the others. It doesn't make up for my behavior, but I hope that this will help make up some ground between us. I like to keep a good relationship with all my students, and I would be remiss if there was bad blood between us. Naruto was stunned. Of all the things he had expected of his former teacher, an apology certainly wasn't one of them. While he held no love for one of his former oppressors, he didn't hate him either. He had overcome any and all efforts the man had made to hinder him. The academy was behind him now, and the man seemed sincerely sorry. Maybe it was time to bury the hatchet. If not, he would just keep an eye on the man. The blonde smiled. Apology accepted. The man seemed surprised. That's it, he asked. Naruto shrugged in response. The academy's behind me now. Everything that happened there is water under the bridge, I guess. A genuine smile lit up the scarred man's face. That's good to hear, Naruto. Ha. Anyway, I'll probably be running missions with you in a few months. No sense in not being able to work with a future teammate. The blonde smirked widely. Irika guffawed into his bowl of noodles. Humility isn't one of your strong points, is it? What makes you so sure you'll be a Chunin in a few months? I thought that was obvious, Irika-sensei. I'm awesome like that. The Chunin held back from cuffing the boy over the head. You'd do well to curb that ego of yours. You might be good for a genin, but you've got a ways to go before you're Chunin material. Bah! You know I'm awesome, Irika-sensei. I totally destroyed Mizuki-sensei today. Irika snickered at the boy's enthusiasm. He had indeed witnessed the rout, and had been more than a little impressed with the boy's skill. Still, Naruto, Mizuki was holding back against all of you. I'm sure that your match would have gone quite differently if he had been really trying. If only you knew, Naruto thought. Maybe. The boy shrugged childishly. Maybe nothing. Mizuki is a battle-tested Chunin with experience that you just don't have. As am I, he added as more of an afterthought. Naruto accepted the point. He already knew that he was far from strong enough to achieve his goal. Some sound advice from a senior officer wasn't unwelcome. Yeah, I hear you, Naruto conceded. I still kicked his ass today. Irika snorted. You made a good showing, as did your sparring partner. Naruto raised an eyebrow. How did Irika know that he and Sasuke trained together? At his questioning look, the man elaborated. Please, Naruto, did you think that the top two rookies training together wouldn't gather any notice? Give people some credit. Huh. Guess we underestimated you guys. Naruto was surprised that the Chunin had found out about his training schedule. He and Sasuke, while not being overtly secretive about their training, had kept it fairly close to the vest. Take a lesson from it, Irika commanded. Always overestimate people. It doesn't matter if they're your enemies or friends. Naruto nodded once, crisply, at the advice. Any response the boy might have had was cut off by the appearance of another Chunin. He looked haggard and more than a little ruffled to Naruto. Iruka-san, the Hokage has ordered all active duty Chunin to report to him immediately. Calm down, Kamugi. Iruka ordered. What happened? The forbidden scroll of seals has been stolen, the man replied. He looked to be on the verge of hyperventilating. Who's the suspect? Naruto asked from his position. The man didn't even glance at him as he answered, Uzumaki Naruto was spotted leaving the administration building 10 minutes ago. Naruto and Iruka exchanged a look. I'm Uzumaki Naruto. I've been here for over half an hour, Naruto said uncertainly. His mind was trying to wrap itself around the prospect of someone stealing something while disguised as him of all people. The man, Kamugi, finally noticed Naruto's presence. He drew a kunai. Stand down, Kamugi. Iruka bellowed. I can personally vouch for Naruto's innocence here. He's been with me for the last 20 minutes. Naruto barely withheld a sneer of disgust as the Chunin obeyed Iruka without a second thought. The man was clearly not thinking straight. Only an idiot would immediately move to attack a person who couldn't be where they were, by the man's own testimony. That kind of split-second decision-making got people killed on missions. How did this guy become a Chunin anyway? We have to report to the Hokage immediately. He needs to know that Naruto's innocent. Naruto nodded curtly. My apartment is on the way. I'll drop in to get some supplies first. Iruka looked torn for a moment, but accepted the course of action. Someone had tried to frame Naruto for high treason. It was reasonable for the boy to be prepared for any eventuality in this instance. Make it fast. The blonde slipped a hidden kunai into his hand as he crept up the stairs to his apartment, Iruka and Kogmuji behind him. He needn't have been so discreet. The person who had snuck into his apartment certainly hadn't been. Naruto cursed sulfurously as he studied the open door. He pushed the open door inward and walked calmly to his bed. The intruder hadn't made a mess of things, but it was obvious that whoever it was had expected Naruto would be at his apartment. They had likely gone there to kill him before impersonating him. Thankfully, he hadn't been there. He knew he was strong for a genin, but whoever this was had been a professional. The only true evidence of their visit was the open door, a sloppy mistake likely made in frustration. They had managed to sneak into the administrative building and steal a highly guarded artifact. Naruto didn't favor his chances had the person been able to surprise him. He dropped to a knee beside his bed, and pulled up floorboard that had been securely fastened. He quickly strapped his weapons pouches to his legs and hips. His shiny new Hitayate was tied securely around his forehead. I'm ready. Let's go. The Hokage needs to know the full scope of the situation. Iruka was the leader of their makeshift group. The three sped across the rooftops of Konoha at speeds hard to follow. If Iruka was surprised that Naruto could keep pace so easily, he didn't show it. Kamugi did though. The time passed in a blur for Naruto. He had survived one assassination attempt on his person when he was younger. He had been saved from another one by sheer luck. He couldn't help but feel shaken at the notion as the group came to a halt on the roof of the administration building. The Sandaime was waiting for them. Hokage-sama. Iruka burst out. The aged legend took in their forms. His eyes held a calculating gleam as they surveyed Naruto. Save your words, Iruka. I believe that I have some idea of the situation we are in, the Hokage said. His gravelly voice was neutral. Naruto couldn't be sure, but he thought the old man looked relieved to see him where he was. I take it you can vouch for Naruto's innocence? Yes, Hokage-sama. Naruto and I were eating at Ichiraku Ramen when the crime occurred. It couldn't have been him. The Ikirakus can verify that. The old man nodded his acceptance. Very well, though that means that our situation is even direr. I scrambled the available Chunin under the notion that they would be tracking a new genin. We now have to assume that a much more capable shinobi has penetrated our defenses. Hokage-sama, Naruto interjected. The infiltrator broke into my apartment while I was at Ichiraku's. It was likely an attempt to dispose of me before the crime was committed. The old eyes seemed to stare through him. Naruto fidgeted nervously before the legend. It had been a while since he had spoken with the Sandaime, and the circumstances were far from cheerful. That is probable. Was there any hard evidence of the break-in? The door was ajar when we entered, Naruto answered with some confusion. Of course there was evidence, why else would they be reporting it? The information gave the Hokage pause for a few moments. When he spoke, his words were certain, though mostly to himself. Then we are dealing with a homegrown threat. No foreign infiltrator would have been so sloppy in their execution, especially if the attack failed to produce results. Nor would they have cause to target young Naruto specifically. Naruto was confused. He knew that many in the village didn't like him, for reasons unknown, but why would anyone have cause to target and frame him specifically? It didn't make sense. The Hokage made 5 hand seals. Unbeknownst to the group, the tattoos of all active ANBU members had just begun to burn. It signaled them to report to headquarters immediately. Hiro, Iroh, the Hokage addressed 2 hidden ANBU by name. Report to headquarters and briefed the captain of Alpha Platoon on the situation. We have a homegrown traitor who is currently in possession of the Forbidden Scroll of Seals. Yes, Hokage-sama. The 2 ANBU sped off, all but invisible to Naruto's eyes. Irika, Kamugi, report to the Yamanaka clan compound. Wake Yamanaka Inoichi and brief him on the situation. The first Fireblade has the authority to recall active shinobi. All Chunin currently on duty are to be recalled. ANBU will handle the infiltrator. Yes, Hokage-sama. The Chunin made haste toward the sprawling clan compound, Irika with a glance back at Naruto. Naruto fidgeted nervously in front of the Sandaime. The old man seemed oblivious to the boy's discomfort. He merely stared at the Hokage monument before him in pensive silence. Naruto said nothing. After what seemed to be an eternity of waiting, the Sandaime sighed. His whole body seemed to shrink as he let out the breath. Walk with me, Naruto. I feel that you are safest in my presence tonight, and I would like to have a cup of tea in my office. It does wonders for an old man's nerves. Naruto was silent as he followed in Sarutobi's wake. The man walked briskly through the corridors of the administration building, and Naruto was hard-pressed to keep up. Eventually, the Sandaime led him to the large, circular office where he spent the majority of his days. He was surprised to see a steaming pot of tea waiting for them when they arrived. Protection of the Hokage involves more than just standing outside my office all day, Naruto, Sarutobi addressed the boy as he poured the tea into 2 waiting mugs. The job requires both combat prowess and some level of domestication. He smiled wryly at the disbelieving expression on the boy's face. Oh yes. Naruto burst out laughing. The image of the Hokage's elite guards making his tea was just too funny an image. Indeed, many of the newer recruits are quite surprised when their senior officers send them on errands for me. I believe the senior members consider it some form of hazing. The Hokage kept his smile all the while, sipping his tea absently. It was difficult for Naruto to reconcile the image of this grandfatherly figure with the information he knew of the man. It had been that way ever since the blonde had read of his exploits in the First and Second Shinobi Wars. The idea that this man, currently laughing with him, was known as the Shinobi no Kami was hard to wrap one's mind around. It's quite the image, old man. Naruto accidentally referred to the man as he used to and was about to apologize, but his Sandaime just chuckled good-naturedly. Yes it is, Naruto-kun. Now, I'm sure you're wondering what this is all about. The abrupt change of topic threw Naruto for a second. Yes, Hokage-sama, I am. He recognized the change in tone, and reverted to a more formal approach. Walk with me then. Once more, Naruto followed the sweeping white robes of the professor through the administration building. They came to a halt outside a locked door with an inscribed pattern on the aged wood. Sarutobi made a few seals before his fingers lit up in a specific pattern. Naruto watched, entranced by the visible chakra, as the Hokage pushed his fingertips to the pattern on the door. The pattern, now identified as a seal of some sort, lit up in a blinding flash of blue. The door swung open obediently, revealing numerous shelves almost twice the size of Naruto. This, Naruto, is the Hokage's library. Naruto's eyes lit up at the prospect of being in the super-secret library that was reserved for the Hokages only. Maybe I could swipe something, he thought excitedly. There was no telling what kind of techniques were in here. Now, before you entertain notions of taking some jutsu scrolls, know that the seal on the door acts as more than a lock. The stern look on Sarutobi's face removed any thought of stealing a technique that Naruto had but a moment before. The old man hadn't said what would happen if Naruto had tried to leave with a scroll, but then he didn't have to. Every Hokage since the Shodai has contributed to this vast library, more than any other. He wasn't called the professor for nothing, it seemed. Naruto lost sight of the man as he disappeared behind a vast shelf. One can find anything from personal ninjutsu, to notes on the wars of the time, to the forbidden scroll of seals, he finished while retrieving a large scroll from the back of the room. Naruto's eyes widened in disbelief as he saw the supposedly stolen scroll. But I thought, how, he sputtered. The wry smile returned. You didn't really think that I left priceless information just lying around? I'm afraid that the scroll the thief has is but a decoy. Then why the ANBU? Naruto asked. Attempting to steal this scroll is still high treason, Naruto-kun, regardless of the result. That, and the decoy has some formidable defenses of its own. It would take some skill to bypass them with little detection. I'd rather trust the thief to my ANBU, rather than a group of chunin, half of which are still half asleep. The Hokage's argument was sound and logical. Why am I here, Hokage-sama? He finally blurted out. He had nothing else to say. Aside from the protection issue, which was nicely resolved due to the old man's presence, he had no reason to be staring at the real forbidden scroll. The Hokage sighed heavily. That, Naruto-kun, is what I'm getting to. He unfurled the large scroll. Naruto's sharp eyes briefly viewed a few of the earlier techniques in the scroll before Sarutobi channeled some chakra into the paper and they disappeared. They were replaced by 4 complex designs. The 4 inscriptions, Naruto thought they might be seals of some sort, had various scribbled notes next to them. To the right of the separate designs was another, more complex one. To Naruto's untrained eyes, it looked like a combination of the first 3. What are they? He breathed. He crouched down to better view the scribbles. His brain was attempting to read the notes adjacent to the designs with little success. It looked like they were written in a hurry. He vaguely made out the words demon, chakra, and seal. They are seals, Naruto-kun, Sarutobi answered from above his crouched form. On the right is the hack no Fuin Shiki. The one on the left is the Shiki Fujin. In the middle is the Shursho they make this one. A finger entered Naruto's vision, pointing at the 4th seal. What do they do? Naruto's interest was piqued. There had to be a reason for the Sandaime to show him this. They seal chakra in various ways. Each way is specific. The hack no Fuin Shiki and the Shursho Fuin lock away and can regulate chakra. Together they make the 8 trigon sealing style. He smiled thinly at Naruto's confusion. While you don't have to know the particulars, though it might aid you in the future to learn them, just know that the 8 trigram style is capable of sealing away truly massive amounts of chakra. Naruto nodded and turned back to the indecipherable notes. The 3rd seal, the Shiki Fujin, summons the death god. Naruto's head snapped up in shock. Sarutobi nodded grimly. Oh yes. You now understand why this scroll is so important. Such information would not be beneficial to Konoha in the hands of another village. No shit. In any event, the Shiki Fujin is a contract with the Shinigami. One can tear the chakra, soul, or both, from any person or anything the user so chooses. At the price of their own soul, of course. Naruto was in shock. He had no idea that there were techniques that were that powerful. A contract with the Shinigami of all things. He made a note to look into Fuinjutsu at some point in his life. The details, of course, made this meeting even more confusing to the boy. That's awesome and all, Hokage-sama, but why are you telling me this? It had to be important. Information like this didn't get entrusted to Genin for no reason. Naruto knew he was pretty good, but this stuff was just ridiculous. He had managed to piece together from the notes that these three things could seal chakra amounts on the level of the 9 Biju. Why would he need to know about something like this? The old man took a seat across from him on the floor. Tell me, Naruto, have you ever seen this design before? He pointed to the final seal. Naruto shook his head. He couldn't remember ever seeing something that complex before. Well then, I suppose it's best to start from the beginning. The legend sighed heavily, and Naruto experienced a feeling of great foreboding. There once appeared a 9-tailed demon fox. A wave of its tail could level a mountain, and a flex of its paw could create a tsunami. To fight the demon, the shinobi were assembled, but only one man could stand against the monster's might. That brave man sealed the demon, but at the cost of his life and soul. Sarutobi's brown eyes bored into Naruto's horrified orbs of blue, his mind jumping to the obvious conclusion before the story was even properly underway. The boy had heard the story enough times to catch the different wording that Sarutobi used. He knew the difference between seal and kill. That man was the Yondaime Hokage. / It is important for you all to remember that the life of a shinobi is a hard one, filled with many obstacles. Cherish and hone your skills, but more importantly, cherish each other. Life is short in the field, and you would do well to remember to trust your comrades and friends as much as you do yourselves. Irika finished his heartfelt speech with a short nod to the room at large. Now, before we move to the team assignments, are there any last questions for your old sensei? He asked good-naturedly to the class. Naruto wasn't quite sure how he managed to put up the facade so easily. That said, he hadn't had so much information dumped on him as Naruto had. Yes, Lee? Irika asked a girl with a raised hand. Sensei, what happened to Mizuki-sensei? I thought he would be here for the team assignments. Irika fidgeted nervously for a moment before composing himself. Mizuki was, unfortunately, involved in an incident late last night. Rest assured, he is in good health and being taken care of by some of the finest specialists that Konoha has to offer. Naruto barely withheld a snort. That was the official story that Irika was supposed to give. Naruto was privy to a few more details than his peers. The so-called specialists Mizuki was being treated by weren't all that interested in his health. Now, on to the team assignments. Naruto tuned out his sensei as he began to announce the various teams. Last night had been both horrifying and fruitful. The knowledge that there was a massive demon sealed within his chakra system wasn't a piece of information that one readily came by. It did explain quite a bit though. Apparently, the information was distributed on a need-to-know basis. That was why Naruto hadn't known beforehand. Naruto wondered why the whole village needed to know. The Sandaime had said that the information was out before it could be properly contained. The apology didn't make up for the years of isolation, but at least Naruto now had a reason to cling to. It was surprisingly uplifting, knowing why a village full of people hated him, rather than just speculation. His opinion of the village as a whole had dropped tremendously. The way they viewed him was like thinking that the bowl for the ramen and the ramen were the same thing. It was ridiculous. He had wanted to know more, like why he was chosen, but they had been interrupted by the apprehending of the traitor Mizuki. He had been dismissed with a standing invitation to come and talk to the Hokage about the situation whenever he so chose. It was a generous offer. He would save it for later, when he had more questions. The rest of his night had been spent upon the head of the Yondaime, his idol. It was difficult to think of the man as anything but his vision of the hero was clouding with anger. Why had it been him who was chosen? Surely there were others. It wasn't like he could ask the man though. So Naruto would make do with interrogating the Sandaime once he got his head on straight. And he knew himself well enough to know that it certainly wasn't on straight now. But right now, he had team assignments. His shinobi career still came first. The knowledge of the Kyuubi had only strengthened his resolve to get stronger. He now had a reason for why the shadowy Akatsuki might be after him. It made no difference though. When they came for him, he would be ready. Team 7, Iruka called. Uchiha Sasuke, Haruno Sakura, Nara Shikamaru, led by Jonin Hatake Kakashi. Even in his subdued state, Naruto spared a smirk at the twitching Sasuke and groaning Shikamaru. He didn't bother to look toward the squealing Sakura. Team 8, Aburame Shino, Hyuga Hinata, Akimichi Chuji, led by Jonin Yuhi Kurenai. Was Naruto seeing things, or did Iruka just blush at the name of the Jonin? Team 9 is still in circulation from last year, so, Team 10, Inazuka Kiba, Yamanaka Ino, Uzumaki Naruto. Iruka locked eyes with the blonde boy and nodded. Naruto nodded back. Led by Jonin Sarutobi Asuma. Naruto leaned back as he glanced at his two teammates. Kiba looked happy with the selection. Ino was scowling at a smirking Sakura. They would do. Even if they didn't, they wouldn't slow Naruto down. That was a certainty. You are now all shinobi of Kanahagakure no Sato. I wish you luck and may you burn with the will of fire.
That's it for today. Remember to show your support to the creator of this story if you enjoyed it. If you would like more parts of the story to be uploaded, leave a comment and subscribe to get notified when the story continues. Bye-bye for now, and I hope that you all have a wonderful rest of your day.